Peace and love, y'all. Welcome to a brand called Me. I am your host, Chris Kazi Roll, and on this show, you will learn how to build your personal brand, become your best self, and make a living doing what you love. Let's get this party started. Peace and love, y'all. We're here with the founder of Move the Crowd, an entrepreneurial training company. We're here to talk about her journey and some of those pivotal moments that helped the building of a brand called Rha. So Rha, talk a little bit about, before Move the Crowd, back in New York City, what laid the foundation of who Rha Goddess is?
I definitely think it was my parents. My joke always is like I was born into the intersection of civil rights and hip hop, and the two, because I feel like in some ways those are the two strongest influences that have been in my life. My parents really, coming from a time and era in our nation's history where they weren't necessarily afforded basic dignity and respect, and had to fight. Just for the basic bare essentials of life and liberty and the pursuit. And all of the things that I think that they instilled in us, which was really about, if you ever had any opportunity, any kind of advantage, that you always gave back. You always made a way. And it's interesting because it's not even like giving back. Like it was really about creating room, creating space for people to thrive. And so I feel like they instilled that in me. And so my passion has always been about supporting the best in all of us and creating more room and space for us to achieve our full potential. I think the other thing is of course hip hop. Listen, coming of age, rhyming in the hallways, those of you who know the culture, just beats and rhymes, notebooks, for me, that idea of making something out of nothing, that idea about rising from the unexpected, the unusual suspects, the unpredictability, the vast creativity, all of those things that are integral to the culture were very much poured in my formative years.
Yeah. And in the world of hip hop, somebody that made the greatest impression on you, I'm sure it's an amalgamation of multiple,
yeah. But shout out KRS-One, shout out Chuck D, shout out Eric B and Rakim, and then if we look at the ladies, Sha Rock for sure, Sequence. I'm like really dating myself, you all, because this was like the beginning. But I would say those voices, those energies for sure. I think Melly Mel's the Message, that sort of grandfather of conscious hip hop. I think all of those for me made incredible impressions.
Can you talk a little bit about, you as a MC, poet, hip hop? How do you make that transition? What was the thing that made you say, hey, you know what, I want to expand who I am and how I present myself to the world?
Yeah, I feel like, Move the Crowd really came out of this deep desire to try to figure out how to have my altruism be financially sustainable. My desire to want to make a difference, my desire to want to be about the betterment and the upliftment of other people, and having a hard time really trying to figure it out and put it all together. If I was in artistic spaces, a lot of the narrative was about, the starving artist. If I was in activist spaces, very, very, very similar, it was really all about the grassroots. And I remember just kind of like having this come to Jesus moment, coming back from an international trip to Africa, not being able to pay the rent and just going like, I gotta figure this out. And for me, I went and got a very unorthodox business education, sat at the feet of some really smart people who had built multi-million-dollar businesses and just absorbed everything I possibly could. And I remember applying, and there was a lot of extrapolation in the information because they weren't talking to me. They weren't talking to me as someone whose products or audiences did not fit in the neatly prescribed boxes. And they certainly weren't talking to me as someone who really wanted to be driven by mission and vision. It was a lot about making money, and kind of the non-for-profit people in those rooms, got patted on the head and asked, when are you going to make some money? But what I will say was the information was gold. And when I was able to extrapolate it, when I was able to kind of make it my own, I was able to triple my income in a very, very short time. And then I could hear my mother's voice, any advantage, you make a way. And I was like, I got to teach this to everybody I know, And that was really the launching of Move the Crowd.
No, I was definitely inspired. I think we did a kind of a mapping. And I think at the time when I was there, I was like very limited in what I thought was possible. And I also was kind of making that expansion and probably was dealing with, I didn't have the words at the time, imposter syndrome, kind of dealing with that. Well, that's not me, who am I to coach? Even though I was mentoring at the time. And so being there was so interesting how paths crossed into that moment, because that's what I needed to hear. When I came to reconnect with you, you were in the background and you really had built this company with Move the Crowd. So talk about the choice to kind of just focus more on the work and the people rather than, this personal brand.
It's interesting because even as an artist, I've always been a reluctant leader. I'm not in the front of the room because I have to have the spotlight. And that's interesting because I was having a conversation with another really incredible artist and visionary and mogul. And we were talking about the difference is that there are some people who seek the spotlight like they have to have it. Like if this light ain't shining on them, it's a problem, right? And no judgment, but that's what it is. And then there are other people who don't necessarily seek the spotlight, but the spotlight seeks them. And they're in whether it's certain ways in which they move, or they recognize that when they are in the spotlight, something happens. There's something that gets activated, or they're there because it facilitates a bigger vision. And I think I've always been that person where it's more like I'm open to the spotlight to the degree that it facilitates the impact that I want to drive in the world. But if I ever had my choice on any given day, I would be on my couch, right, with a bag of Doritos, vegan Doritos, chilling, I'm much more comfortable leading from the back of the room, much more comfortable not in the spotlight. And it's been my own journey to be able to become more comfortable with it while recognizing that it has been very much an integral part of my calling.
Yeah. And from the back of the room, what is it that you feel when you see your leader in the front of the room, somebody that you poured into, you helped them to expand their view of themselves? How does that feel?
There's a sense for me of just pride, and it's humbling, because I feel like our dreams are sacred. And sometimes we share our dreams with people who don't understand the value of what we're sharing. They may not get the vision. They may not recognize that your dreams are pearls. And I often talk with my leaders about the fact, like, you wouldn't let just anybody hold your baby. When you're birthing a new idea or you're bringing a new vision into the world, that it's important to be very particular about where and how you share, because you want to have water and sunlight anytime you're trying to grow anything. And there are many people, even people who care about you, and sometimes it's even out of their concern for you, that they will step on your seeds, or they will throw water on your fire. And so there's always a sense of pride and humility, because I watch people speak things into existence. I help facilitate people being able to bring things into existence. And many of those things have gone on to impact millions and millions and millions of lives.
You know, Big Daddy Kane, definitely. But Rakim, you know, as a 5% of myself in high school, he, you know, that's the God MC.
100%.
Was it a coincidence to, you know, move the crowd and rock?
No.
So talk a little bit about that moment.
The song inspired the naming of the company. And for me, it was a metaphor for lots of different things, right? So 1984, Move the Crowd comes out. And his whole trope, because to me, MC means move the crowd, right? And so, you know, we used to hold it as Masters of Ceremony, right? Which was very much about, you know, facilitating the conversation and keeping the program moving. But this idea for me of him flipping, or let me say, building on the metaphor of MC standing for moving the crowd, meaning it is about motivation. It's about inspiration. It's also for me about moving people from one place to another. And so when I thought about why I wanted to name the company Move the Crowd was because, in my opinion, when I think about the information that I was able to get sitting at the feet of those masters for all those years, that these were the keys to success. And so much of the way in which we've understood success in our global culture is only a tiny, 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 tiny percent of the world gets to participate in that kind of success, that kind of opportunity. Only a tiny, 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 tiny percent of the world gets to realize their potential. To me, MC means move the crowd. And it was all about your ability to move people from one place to another. Right? Whether we think about that metaphorically or whether we think about that physically. In my case, it was about mobility and giving more people access to the kind of mobility that lived on the wings of their dreams.
Was there anything else in play name-wise before that? And it just kind of, it was a moment of this is the name, like,
It
no?
was always Move the Crowd. I knew it. I just knew it in my fiber of my being. It was always Move the Crowd, because it was always about this idea of giving more people access to the kinds of opportunities that would enable them to thrive.
When did you decide that, you know what, it would be advantageous or helpful for me to step out? The same way I'm, you know, you're creating space, holding space, encouraging, coaching, helping people to elevate their game. You know, when did you decide that, all right, you know what, I need to step out?
It was, again, you know, here's my reluctant leader again. It was a calling. It was an urge. And it was also a very clear message spiritually that was about my desire to impact at a greater level and what was being required of me to be able to impact at the level that I wanted to impact. And I was getting this message of, you got to be willing to be more visible. But my call, I think, to any form of the spotlight is always rooted in the commitment and the desire to move people closer to whatever reality it is that they most want for themselves.
What did you have to overcome in order to step out?
Oh, a lot of fear. Of attack, of persecution, of judgment, of criticism, of publicly failing and being embarrassed and humiliated. I mean, I think it's all the things that we don't give voice to, you know? Like, we all have, on some level, some of that going on. And the worst is the feeling of the public humiliation and the sort of ostracism or the alienation. Like, you don't ever want to be that person that people are whispering about, oh yeah, you know, they tried so-and-so, that was a hot mess. And, you know, and I think, you know, at that deep level, am I worthy of this? You know, I get a lot of like encouragement, but no real commitment. And I remember one day, I was pitching an investor in Vancouver. We're good friends now. Pitching an investor in Vancouver. And he was like, I don't know you. I don't know whether or not you can do this. No. And I literally said, thank you. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for saying that to me. I can show you better than I can tell you. And it was that fire, that moment of like, why am I going around begging people to give me the opportunity to build this, to do this, to make this happen? I need to just do it. I need to just do it. I need to just build it. I need to trust in myself. I need to bet on me. And I feel like there's a part of every single one of us that wants the permission to bet on ourselves.
So as you now are, early on stepping out, you and I come from the era where we ain't had no social media.
No.
Right? So it's like, so was your first introduction Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or?
Oh, God. I mean, Lord have mercy. If my team were to hear you have this conversation with me, they would all be laughing hysterically. I think it was Facebook, and I think the only reason I got on Facebook was because somebody threatened to do a page in my name. And I was like, I can't let that happen. So I think it might have been Facebook and Twitter kind of sort of putting a toe in. All at the same time. But I think Facebook was the place where we really started to kind of invest time and energy to try to see what could be possible. I am not a big social media fan. I have to speak the truth. I'm not. I struggle. And it's not because I don't recognize the value, because I do see the value. I think there are people who've been able to really express themselves in ways maybe that they would not have been able to if they had not had those mediums. I'm always working to make peace with that, but that's the part of me that doesn't want to be visible, right? So I have to say that that's my thing. However, I'm spending a lot of time on LinkedIn these days. And part of it is because of the conversation of working with leaders and the work that I do with leaders, that is where many of my leaders are.
Has it been helpful having a personal brand out there?
I think so. It's interesting. I was in a conversation with another entrepreneur, very, very successful serial entrepreneur. And what we had distinguished in the conversation is that I've spent the last 30 years really building more of a reputation than necessarily a brand. And there is a difference.
There's a difference.
There is a difference. My reputation reaches far. My brand, I think, is still new on sub-levels. But what is consistent in my reputation and in my brand is that same commitment to authenticity, that same commitment to impact, that same commitment to a kind of excellence that enables us to really move the needle on what matters.
Talk about that. So in terms of the reputation, how did you, the reputation wasn't about you per se, it was about the service. And so then the service and this, the results then becomes the reputation.
Yeah.
And then, like you said earlier, in terms of, I guess, people refer because, hey, I had a great experience. I got these results.
Yeah.
Then check this person out. And that's word of mouth. That's not social.
Most of my business has been built on word of mouth. And I actually feel really proud of that. And I take nothing away from all of the other mediums as we grow. We're going to continue to lean into those opportunities and other ways to touch people. But I believe firmly that my job is to put it on the board, is to put results on the board, is to transform as many lives, is to lift as many ideas, is to support as many change agents and influencers and leaders as I possibly can. Because I believe the more successful that they are, the more the idea, the notion, the commitment, the values, what we stand for as a company will continue to exist.
When you first got on social, did you think that you needed to be there, and did you have a realization that you don't necessarily need to be there? Or do you think you just need both? What's your thoughts there? Just thinking back to when you first started.
Yeah, when I got on social, it was because someone told me I needed to be on social. Let's be real. Someone said to me I needed to be on social. What I came to realize very early on is, as I really began to become intentional about social, was that I wanted to figure out how to be me and be on social. And I still feel like I'm in the process of figuring out how to be me and be on social. My husband jokes all the time, someone who's antisocial on social. I'm like, whatever, dude.
I like
But
that.
I'm trying to social on social, right? But I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. And I don't think I'm alone. I think there's so many, you know, introverts or people who just, you know, are called to different things in terms of what preoccupies their energy and their time.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, does social help me? I think, yes. If you ask me in the last 5 years, when I finally sort of surrendered to being here and then wanting to try to have being here matter, I think it's absolutely made a difference.
And is also a form of preemptive marketing, because when someone who doesn't know Rha may not know someone who has the reputation, but they heard your name, oh, let's Google her. And when they Google, they won't know all the history of Rha. How are they going to find out? They may go to one of those channels and see this documentary of all this.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's funny because it's similar to the book. You know, I'm about to launch a website and I've never had one. You know, the company has a website, but I've never, in 30 plus years of being a brand, right, or being in the world, had one. And it's major for me, you know, because again, I think this is me at this stage of my life kind of going, okay, this is me, you know, and being willing to say, okay, this is me, and here we go. And it's funny in that so much of my work has been helping other people do that, and do that in a way that's really, really successful and really, really impactful. And I feel like I'm finally sort of taking my own coaching, so to speak.
Yeah.
In many ways.
What is the Rha Goddess brand? Whatever comes to mind, because I have my own.
Yeah, I mean, at the heart of hearts, I am a lover. I'm a lover who knows how to fight, but who also knows how to stand and deliver. And that is what I want to be known for. I'm a standing, breathing commitment to elevation, upliftment, transformation, authenticity, vulnerability, and contribution.
What do you say is Rha Goddess, like the superpower?
Superpower?
What is it that you know people come to you for? You know,
They come to be loved unconditionally. They come to be seen. They come to be heard. They come to be understood. And then I think they come to then begin to activate on what they're seeing and what they're hearing and what they're understanding.
now one part of being a superhero, you have a superhero name. So Rha Goddess, how did you come into that name?
Yeah, I did an 86-day cleansing fast with Queen Afua to come into my name. And my name dropped in. I remember I was turning 33, right, which, you know, you're the Christ year, right? You haven't been to 33 yet? Get ready. But 33 is a doozy, usually, because it is that year of rebirth, of death and rebirth. And I was definitely feeling like I needed to shake up my life. And again, it was right around that time that just everything was coming to a head. And it's interesting because I was shot at on my 21st day of that 86-day cleansing fast. And I often wondered if I had not been in that cleansing space, would I have had the outcome that I had? You know, like, would I still be here? Would I still be standing here? And would I still be able to be alive to tell the story? So there was something about me being on the road and being on the path, and the universe sort of saying, you need that turbo boost. But my name came like at maybe the first 2 days. It was like, okay, I'm stepping into a new name. I'm stepping into a new reality. And this was the charge or the mandate for my life, was to be light, was to enlighten, to bring light, to bear light, to reveal.
Would you say that social media has helped in that? Because I would say, if you're on someone's website or videos or YouTube or all that's helping, talk about a little bit about how it's helped.
Yeah, I definitely feel both the combination of social and just podcasts. Like podcasts have been, and that's a medium I love, because I feel like there's been such incredible, rich conversations that have happened through that medium. It's interesting because I would say for many people who feel introverted and not necessarily doing the video or doing the video channel, they tend to be more inclined to a podcast. They're very, very thoughtful, very introspective. And there's a way that medium lends itself to people who are very introspective. And I would definitely, absolutely say that it's been game changing, especially around the book. When we launched the book, if it weren't for, I think, all the podcasters who really got behind the work, we may have had it may not have been as successful as it was. And I feel very grateful and blessed and privileged. And I still do podcasts.
Can you talk about just the journey to manifest the book? Because, we all, well, first talk about the title and just your journey in terms of manifesting it and how the two are connected.
Yeah, so the title came through this really powerful process with my agents. Shout out Park Fine, love you all. They were really going back and forth with me about the structure, and I knew what I wanted to deliver in the book. I knew what the content was. But we were trying to come to something that we really felt like encapsulated what the invitation of the book was, or what the call to action of the book was. And I just kept saying this, like, everyone has a calling. Like, I really believe that, that I believe that every single one of us is being called to something. Whether we feel that calling in a moment or whether we feel that calling in the trajectory of our life, we're all being called at any given moment to something, be it little c or big C. And that is often the path to our purpose. That's often the path to our highest expression, our greatest contribution, and our most authentic self. And if we can follow that path and follow that road and heed those breadcrumbs, that's where the magic and the miracles get to happen. And so when my folks reflected back, and the editorial team reflected back, the call, I was like, yes, because we were going to call it Stay True, Get Paid, Do Good. And there was this whole back and forth around it, right up until really almost pretty much the very end. But I said, I feel like I can talk about the calling for 50 years. And not that Stay True, Get Paid, Do Good is not integral to it, but this idea that every single one of us is so universal. And I wanted something universal.
The idea of a brand called me is kind of like a double entendre. It's not just like, hey, I am a brand. It's also that, these bigger entities out there will pick up the phone and call me. What is it that you think that makes them call? What are they seeing?
I feel like it's interesting. I feel like sometimes it's a problem that needs solving, that they believe that I can help them solve. Sometimes it's people who need inspiring. I would say more often than not, they're looking for inspiration. They're looking to have the people who they want to engage be elevated in some way, shape, or form.
What is the message around monetization? What are thoughts?
Yeah, I got lots of thoughts about it. I have to acknowledge Jay Abraham, who's one of the greatest marketers of all time. I had the privilege of doing an intensive with him, and he really changed the game for me by introducing me to the concept of monetization. And I really say that it changed my life, because once I recognized and realized that if I could figure out how to package and sell what I created, I would never starve. You know, and that's a big gift to give somebody. Also, I would never be at the mercy of somebody else's situation or circumstances, as long as I knew how to package and sell what I created. And I do want to say that that is the ultimate power, I believe, you know. So I say that to say that, you know, I only coach people I believe in. I only coach people who I think are really serious about the difference and the change that they want to make. And I don't just coach them while they're paying me. I'm always thinking about them. And the relationships that we build are lifelong relationships. But what charging a premium for what I do enables me to do is be present and truly bring my best.
Well, you know, another Rakim song, one of my favorite is Follow the Leader. So as a leader, how do people follow you? It's good. See what I did there?
I need social handles now.
You see what I did there?
Really? I see. You, me and social. Here we go.
Well,
so everything at Rha Goddess, you know, so LinkedIn /Rha Goddess, of course, Instagram at Rha Goddess, Twitter at Rha Goddess.
Well, thank you for making the time. And